Hi, my name's Chris from Alphacrucis College. Thanks so much for joining us. We're here today with Dr. Van Shaw, one of our amazing lecturing staff at Alphacrucis Brisbane. We're just going to have a quick chat with him to find out a little bit more about him and what makes him tick. So, Dr. Van, thanks so much for being with us.
Sheer delight.
Look, Van, you're a bit of a man, a mystery. You've done many things in your life, but to start us off, where did you grow up and how did you come to living in Brisbane now?
All right. I grew up in Brisbane, and I'm a son of last child, 4 children, of Albanian parents. You know where Albania is?
Not really.
Okay, Albania is north of Greece and west of Yugoslavia. So there's some context that perhaps Paul may have gone through Macedonia. It's all that region.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I grew up in Brisbane.
Okay, so you've grown up, did you grow up with quite a strong Albanian a culture, I suppose, within the household, or were you?
No, not at all. Because my dad was an alcoholic, I think the only way I could describe it would be home was like a theatre of war.
Wow. I suppose growing up in a household like that, I'm sure that it would have had quite phenomenal effects on you as a human growing up, and I know you've written quite extensively about that in your first book, which is The Art of Not Disappearing.
That's right.
Which is, I've read the book actually, and I really enjoyed it. And
so have I.
Yeah, we hope so. I suppose growing up within that kind of household, you've come of age in Brisbane as well. How did you become a Christian? Where did that happen in your life? Was that a part of your childhood, or is it something maybe you came to later on in life?
Yes. Came to it, no, it wasn't a part of my childhood. If anything, it wasn't until mid-teens, perhaps, I began this quest for almost like the Red Dwarf. I was wanting to search out all things related to wisdom and mysticism, and there was a brooding darkness about me. I hated the darkness, but I somehow wanted to go into it.
Yeah,
that's a crazy thing. But so that was the path, and of course that led me into Buddhism, and so there's always been this strong meditative quest for me, shunning people, not liking people, even though amazing, I got involved in ladies' hairdressing, which allowed me to be with people. So there was some sort of creative side of me and a few other things that went with that as well. But I think that I've always been, in some sense, spiritually minded. That would be the way to say it, spiritually minded. But the Christ factor came about through an old Anglican priest who came to visit me one day many, many years after I'd left school. He was my RE teacher, but he would often put me out on the veranda because of my behaviour in the class. But he would always say to me, when he came out of the class, he said, you'll discover that my putting you out on the veranda is actually for your own good. And I protested greatly within. But he came visit me much later and actually knocked on the door and said 2 things to me. I've heard that you're into meditation, so here is a book of Hebrew poems. And of course it was the book of Psalms. And then he simply said this, and I pray for you. I pray for you every day. So, that was and so I began reading these Psalms, but in effect though, Chris, in reading the Psalms, and I read them out aloud, I was actually becoming aware over the months that I was actually talking out loud to the God that these Psalms were speaking about. So that was a rather strange thing. And so, and and the rest is in, how I came to know Christ is actually in the first book I wrote, The Art of Not Disappearing. And that would take too long in a 5 or 7 minute interview. but I certainly came to Christ in a rather dramatic way, wonderful way. But I didn't go to church for 2 years. If anything, I didn't like people, and I didn't want to be involved with religion. I just wanted my own intimacy with God. And of course, the woman I've been married to for 43 years, I took my brother, whom I led to the Lord, to a church in the inner city, and she was there, and she came up to me and she said, my name's Hazel, who are you? And I told her, and she said, you don't come very much, do you? And I said, are you so insistent of knowing everything about me? And so...
well, she was. You got married.
Yes, that's true. That's true. Pride is very fragile. In fact, it's not a strong stance that we can adopt. So the next time I came, another 2 months later, she came and up to me and said, "Good to see you, Van." And I was surprised that she remembered my name. But then she said to me, even Moses came down from the mountain. And I knew that was a dig, and she was into just getting into me big time, and so I took offence at that. She knew that I took offence at it, and she said, "It'd be lovely to have coffee with you to get to know you a bit more."
Wow!
But even Moses came down from the mountain to be with the people, and I said, "Goodbye, Hazel." And that was it. But of course, the reality is that was all part and parcel of the breaking open of my life.
Yeah.
To find me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you sort of talk about in your youth coming to terms with your own darkness and walking into that, and then reading these Psalms, which are often about like David and the authors actually exploring their own darkness a lot, isn't it?
Yes.
And I suppose now you've come to know God in this really new way, and being challenged to come down from the mountain. Now that I suppose you're here down from the mountain with us. Like, you have things to share, which I've always really appreciated. What would be something that you'd share with us, maybe now in just like in 30 seconds, that would almost be like a life message of yours that you wish to share with people in everything that you do and say?
Oh, there'd be a number of things that I could share there. I think one of the early things that I remember when I first started reading the New Testament was the whole thing about the Holy Spirit. And then I began to run into Christians who were on about the gifts of the Spirit and the dynamic, spectacular, all that. But I had resolved in my heart, Chris, that I simply wanted to know the Holy Spirit and to love him. And you know what, in doing that, it's brought a great sense of freedom that I'd never known before, because it wasn't about me getting stuff, it was me falling in love with the Holy Spirit. And in fact, I think I became much more human by becoming more in touch with the Holy Spirit than I could have ever realised.
Yeah, wow.
And so when people ask me about my gifts, I said, I haven't got a clue. It's not an issue for me, but I have the Holy Spirit, and sometimes it's like I'm somewhere and, I see something and it's a picture, and I'm thinking, was it the Ribena I had this morning or the vodka I had last night? I don't know. So, but that's the simplicity of my life.
Yeah.
And I think also, to me, the greater the simplicity, the more profound the reality of truth is in that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not the other way around, searching out the complex, profound things. It's much more in the simplicity.
Yeah.
How does Jesus deal with worry and anxiety? He doesn't say pray like Paul does, and that's not a clash of theologies, but he's saying, take a look at the birds of the air and the lilies of the field.
Yeah.
Really? Well, you get a perspective on who it is that's looking after them.
Yeah.
How much more for you?
Yeah.
Simplicity.
Beautiful.
Yes.
I was talking to another staff member.
That's helpful.
Yeah. I was talking to another staff member yesterday, actually, and they described you as saying they love your ability to take big academic concepts and academic thought and amazing things that you've read in some old book somewhere and actually make it really relatable and understandable to normal people. And
Great.
I know we appreciate that about you as like a staff who work with you, and then also our students really love that about you as well. So thank you so much, Dr. Van, for being with us, to talking a little bit about you. I'm sure Van's story really maybe made you go, I want to learn more about that? And if I can say, yes, you do. He does have a lecture, or actually a sermon he preached at Su Presencia Church in Bogota, Colombia. So please go have a watch that. It's on the college's YouTube channel. He's also got a book, his first book, The Art of Not Disappearing.
It's on Audible too.
And it's on Audible. And actually, I listened to it on Audible and it's fantastic. So please go have a listen there as well. But thank you so much. If you want to learn more about Van, check out those 2 resources. And if you want to hear what Van has to say, come to class.